And at participating Hallmark stores, get your hands on the Spooky Sounds tape, full of creepy sounds and Halloween theme songs. $1.95 with any $5 Hallmark purchase, only at participating Hallmark stores. It's a scream.
Welcome back to Monster Madness.
Let's go back now.
Okay. Horror has always been a genre used by aspiring directors to break out into the world of film. And while sometimes we get a super successful and well thought out horror film that gives a filmmaker an opportunity to make art, there are so many attempts that just fall apart in execution. And Madman is a prime example. To understand this failed flick better, we have to break it down. Let's get right to it. Madman may be yet another summer camp slasher, but it's quite unlike Friday the 13th. Instead, it follows a path more similar to The Burning, which I covered in the first Monster Madness, in that it focuses on a legendary character. But The Burning turns Cropsy, a popular urban legend, into a classic-style slasher villain, and Madman stays true to the campfire story roots it sows in the opening scene. A legendary killer is summoned in the classic Candyman or Bloody Mary fashion, by saying his name. And when his name is said, Madman Mars comes to stalk and awkwardly kill a group of young counselors. The premise of the film is one that feels fresh and new, standing out amongst the standard slasher fodder. But, sadly, the entire film quickly devolves into a standard slasher plot, albeit more blunt and mishandled than usual. All the trademarks are there, the stereotyped characters, the romance plot, the final girl. All are represented, but every single one is done wrong. The characters are so basic and bland that they become unrootable. We don't like them enough to want to see them survive, and we don't hate them enough to want to see them die. Instead, we feel so ambivalent that all the kills feel boring. The romance subplot exists for an incredibly uncomfortable love scene, only to fizzle out after the male half becomes the killer's first victim. And even the final girl feels stale, and it's hard to believe that she could face off against such an invincible killer and win. The story might be horribly written, but the initial premise has so much promise and atmosphere that I have to reward it somehow, so Madman gets a 2 for story. To get scared by a movie, you have to get invested in its world. You need to care about characters, or at least feel so absorbed in the film that a loud jolt is enough to shock you out of your stupor. And Madman doesn't deliver any possibility for scares. What atmosphere it creates with its opening sequence, it immediately loses due to its various faults. As a result, Madman is mostly boring, not scary, so it gets a fat goose egg for the scares category. For comedy, though, there's some merit. Absolutely none of the laughs it got out of me were intended. I laughed hard at the overlong romance scene in the hot tub with the bad love song that feels like it was written for a comedy film.
Don't need words to know. Don't need words to know how I feel about you. Don't need words.
The acting is stilted and terrible, and the characters often feel like aliens in their own film. It's hard not to laugh when a victim decides to hide in an old-timey refrigerator that is also incredibly likely to kill you. But, I guess if it worked for Indiana Jones, it should work for her too, right? And then, when our final girl gets a gun, she accidentally blows her own friend's face off. The decisions made in the writing are so baffling, they become funny. So, in the comedy sector, Madman brings home a 3. For kills, Madman is a little more complicated. Despite being an incredibly low-budget film, the kills don't look awful. In fact, some of the kills look just campy enough that they could be fun. But the problem is, the kills don't have any weight. We should be excited by a kill for whatever reason, but instead, they just blend into the background. They hardly add action to the film at all, and the reasons that they happen feel so stupid that it hurts. So for kills, Madman gets a 2. In terms of craft, I've said a lot of the problems already in other sections. I can't really fault a lot of the technical faults because of the film's minuscule budget. For instance, the bad rubber suit worn by the killer was probably the best they could do in terms of makeup, and the headless bodies look like mannequins, but I couldn't do better on that amount of money. Instead, it's writing and acting that really lets this movie down. The actors are wooden and deliver their lines with barely any feeling at all, and and the script is downright horrible. However, it's not a complete disaster for Madman. The premise and opening are genuinely fun bits of filmmaking. The drawing around the opening credits feels like it came from some dark, old hardcover of Grimm's fairy tales, and the backstory of the killer is fun and visually interesting to watch. There's something about that type of campfire ghost story that feels so atmospheric and perfect for a spooky movie. But, sadly, the script in the movie couldn't keep up the momentum. So, for craft, Madman gets a 1. So how does that leave the final score? All things considered, Madman is left with an 8 out of 25. As a result, it's hard for me to recommend this film to anyone. There's a lot of slasher fans on YouTube, and the rest of the internet for that matter, who defend this movie and call it a classic. And yes, I can see why they would like it. The atmosphere is top-notch, at least for 10 minutes of the movie, but it peters out so quickly that by the end of this film, you just want the stupid thing to end already. But if you want inspiration for a fun horror remake, or to learn about screenwriting from some horrible mistakes, give Madman a try. You never know, you may end up one of its many defenders. Anyway, that's all for now, and until next time, stay spooky.